Boss Level, a Hulu original film. Uh, Considering who is in this movie, I mean, I guess I understand Mel Gibson because he's not the box office draw he once was, and he's making a comeback slowly through other channels.
Hmm.
But I mean, Naomi Watts is in this movie, and she's great in it, I think.
Hmm.
But this is one of those films where when I first saw I think you turned me on to it, and I saw the poster art. I'm like, oh, this is another one of those pre-COVID movies that was picked up by someone and put onto a streaming service. But no, this is Hulu all the way. I was surprised by it, and after having watched the movie, I was even more surprised because this seems like something that would have been envisioned for the big screen, and I think enjoyed by people in a really big screen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I know that Carnahan, Joe Carnahan, the director, this has been kind of in his pocket for a while. He's wanted to make it for a while. In fact, I think at one point it was called Continue instead of Boss Level, which would be fun. And I think originally it was supposed to be for 20th Century Fox. I think, is this 20th Century Fox? I don't know. Oh no, it isn't. Yeah, Fox decided not to move forward with it. But yeah, I've been looking forward to it because I've heard Carnahan talk about it here and there. I knew that Mel was not assigned. He was attached to it. You're assigned, and I've watched Frank Grillo's career, for a while, and I think he's a fascinating guy to watch on screen. He's got a great screen presence, and I think he's more than just an action guy. So I had fun with the movie. Yes, it is similar to other movies. It's kind of like an amalgam of some other movies, but I appreciate it wasn't what I expected, and we'll get into that. But I appreciate its tone mostly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm there with you. We're not going to be arguing at all, I don't think, during this
No.
during the show. So if you're looking for a confrontation out there, everybody turn this one off. But no, please don't. Please check out Boss Level on Hulu and come back if you don't want to get spoilery, because we're going to talk about everything in this film because I think it needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
Joe Carnahan, we know him from. And that's another kind of surprising thing is he built his career on these big budget blockbuster in theater movies. The Gray, the A-Team, Smokin' Aces, Narc. I mean, these aren't not all of them did huge business, but he's known for being an action guy.
Sure.
And working with top talent. I love that because Grillo was in The Gray, I believe, with
Yeah.
Neeson, and there's a great dig at Liam Neeson a roundabout way.
Yeah, I think he says he's talking to his son, who's actually played by Frank's actual son.
No way.
Yeah. Roy tells Joe that Roy is Frank's character. Joe is his son, played by his son. That Liam Neeson is a fake tough guy. And of course, Neeson has worked with Carnahan on A-Team, The Gray. So that's pretty funny. Inside joke there.
Now, I did not look very much into this movie. I haven't followed Carnahan's career to the extent that you have, it looks like. So I didn't know things like the fact that father and son are playing father and son. I thought the little boy was some kind of a bizarre clone of Rami Malek because he looks he's got that same kind of look about him.
All right.
And that's not a criticism. I just found it kind of odd. But let's set up this movie. What is Boss Level? Give me the highlights.
Oh my gosh. Well, so it is kind of like, I'll just say it is, if I was to describe it, is kind of like a combination of Groundhog Day meets Edge of Tomorrow meets Baby Driver. So in essence, it focuses on a retired special forces officer who's trapped in a never-ending time loop on the day of his death. Why or how he dies, why he cannot die, why he keeps repeating the day of his death is really the crux of the movie, and why and what he's trying to do to find that out. Now, his estranged. Can we say estranged wife? Were they ever married? I'm not sure.
I don't feel like they were
Yeah,
married. I think they were like
yeah,
boyfriend, girlfriend, and they
yeah.
had a
So let's say estranged lover and the mother of his 10-year-old, 11-year-old boy.
11, yeah.
11, yeah. It played by Naomi Watts. Gemma is her character. She works for this this very specific kind of weird agency. I forget the name of it.
It's Die Now
That's right.
Labs.
Well, I didn't want to forget the name of it. It's Die Now what?
Dino Laboratories or something like that. Yeah.
That's so great. So considering what Frank Grillo's character goes through, yeah, she works for Die Now Laboratories. She seems to be a scientist or researcher, and they developed this thing that looks like it came out of what's that Jean-Claude Van Damme from the early 90s where he goes into the future.
Time Cop?
Yeah, it looks like something from Time Cop. This device, or from Stargate or something.
Well, do you know what that was based on?
Is it based off? I know a Time Cop is based off a comic.
No, the machine is actually based on a real world machine.
Oh, really?
It's called the Large Hadron Collider that CERN has. I think they turned it on in 2008. I don't know if you remember, but there are all these stories based on what it was supposed to do, that it could rip a hole in the fabric, like it could create an artificial black hole that could swallow the world.
Okay. Oh yeah, I think I do remember that. Yeah.
Now CERN has said, and of course, what else are they going to say?
Right.
That there's no possibility of that happening. They said they could make little black holes, but there's no danger to anything
it's not
getting
going to
out.
Swallow up the world. It's okay.
Right. But no, that everything down to the actual design of it. When I first saw this machine, my jaw dropped. I'm like, that's a Large Hadron Collider, but they call it it's like the Osiris magnet or loop or something like that. Yeah.
Right. So Osiris does definitely play a role, both the name and the character in the movie. He obviously, like a lot of time loop movies and do-over or start-over movies, he is learning things each day. Just as somebody who's playing a video game learns different levels and ways to navigate each level. And yes, you do die, but in video games, you get the chance to try that level again. Hence the title boss level. Roy's character actually becomes a boss through all these mistakes, that through all his deaths, really, and the multiple ways he dies is very entertaining and grisly. Many beheadings. So it is very interesting, and of course, Mel Gibson is in the movie as we could say Naomi Watts' boss. Mm-hmm. Another title of the movie, but and he has an interesting. I wish there was a little bit more to him in this movie, because he is very interesting. He is kind of like this right-wing approached, almost like egomaniac in a way, who has this somewhat of a god complex and believes that what they've created, or what Naomi Watts' character has created, is a way to just do over or eradicate the mess that the world has become. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the only thing I'd push back on is the whole right wing thing. I don't. There are plenty of left wing authoritarians to go around.
No. I think he comes out and admits that when he's monologuing to Frank Grillo. Not necessarily on the political side of things. I forget what the line was, but it just came across like he was very much, conservative, and which was funny because that's Mel Gibson too. So
he's going method, yes.
right. Yeah, might as well just play the part.
Did he build the Large Hadron Collider? Is this
right?
Confession?
Yes. But so the movie it's very it's very, let's say, high octane, very action oriented. There's a lot of situations that Roy has to go through. A lot of let's say a lot of people that hired by what's Gibson's character's name is Colonel Clive Ventor.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Clive Ventor, and his right hand man is this character named Brett, played by Will Sasso. And if you don't remember, he was Curly in the Three Stooges movie.
Oh yeah, and he was also he was on Mad TV forever ago.
Yep, and Happy Gilmore, Southland Tales. It's crazy.
Here's a
I
tip.
didn't recognize him initially.
Well, here's a tip. Look up on YouTube. They probably still have it. If you haven't seen it, a Mad TV skit in which he played Tony Soprano. It was around the time that they announced they're going to put Sopranos on like TBS or something. And so they did like a commercial for the heavily edited Sopranos.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
That's funny. I bet you he did a great Gandolfini.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
That's fun.
So now here's something that's interesting. They don't call attention to this. And I thought at some point it was going to be an actual plot point, but Brett, who's the security guard played by Will Sasso, his last name is Dinow. So I thought that at some point they were going to do like this twisty reveal where Gibson was working for him or something like that, but nothing really ever came of it.
Was that in the credits?
It was in a couple of, he was referred to a couple of lines of dialogue.
That his Will Sasso's character is Brett Dinow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That would have been great if like maybe like, you know, somebody like Gene Smart or somebody's playing his mom and comes out going, "What's going on here? I built this company from the ground up. What are you guys doing?" Like, well, mom. You know.
Yeah. Or at least I thought they'd make some kind of a reference of like he was supposed to run the company, but he was too stupid. Right. So. but that's so the thing is he's a smart. One of the things I love about this movie is it knows that you've seen movies like this a million times.
Sure.
So it really plays with the characters because he's not just a dumb henchman. He's pretty smart. He gets bested, you know, spoiler alert.
Right.
But he's not a lunkhead.
No, he's not. And it's not like there's a whole lot of, I mean, there's Brett, who is kind of like Gibson's right-hand man, but then everybody else that goes after Roy is pretty much a hired assassin. And it's a very colorful lot, I will say. And it does feel very much like video game, like antagonists. Like there's these, I think they're French speaking, like twin assassins. And they're always carrying like heavy artillery, like, you know, rocket launchers and stuff.
And like Gatling guns or something.
Yeah.
And they've got the little person who's I think Kaboom is his nickname.
He nixed him. Oh, actually, one of the German twins was Quentin Rampage Jackson, who played B.A. Baracus in A-Team, Carnahan's A-Team movie. Haven't heard much from him, former wrestler. He nicknames Roy nicknames all these guys. I guess so. What I was going back to as far as the tone is, I knew that this was going to be a Carnahan movie. I knew it was going to have Frank Grillo. I knew it was going to be like kind of, you know, violent. And with Gibson, I'm like, okay, it's going to be hard R. It's going to be crazy. I think, yes, it is. It does have severe violence and gore. Sure, you know. Crazy enough, it has no sex and nudity. I just happened to glance at that, but I thought that it would be that, like, really kind of intense, almost, you know, Tarantino-ish kind of thing. But right away when this movie starts, because Roy Grillo's character is narrating the whole thing in this very, very, you know, kind of matter-of-fact style of narration about, this is what's been happening to me. I'm just learning all this. I wake up every day, this guy's trying to kill me and with a machete. There's this girl in bed next to me. I don't know how she got there. I'm learning though, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And, you know, so each time he's basically talking to us, and it is more of like a reflection and voiceover than it is like a straight up narrating a story. So it's not like a, you know, Harrison Ford narration from Blade Runner or anything like that. But you know, it doesn't have a style specific to a set genre, but it is very much like, this is how the movie is going to be, you know. And I think the voiceover, the narration really sets the tone for that. And I was like, oh, well, this is interesting.
It sets a tone. And
Yeah.
I honestly thought for the first 10 minutes that I was going to be in trouble with this movie because I didn't like the voiceover. I think when I go back and watch this again, and I will, I won't have a problem with it because much like the character of Roy, the voiceover evolves during the course of the film. It reminded me because I've been reading a lot of comics lately, and it
Hmm.
reminded me of something out of
Comics.
hmm?
Comics
Oh
lately.
yeah, yeah. Comics for things we'll be talking about very soon, by the way. Stay tuned. But it reminded me, Sin City is probably the easiest example, but it's probably not the most accurate. But like you said, you've got these hard boiled, like the scene where Marv, he wakes up and Goldie's dead, and there's police outside his door, and he has to take them all down. He's very calmly kind of narrating things as these horrible things are happening all around him,
Hmm.
and I like that generally in comics. It's harder to pull off in a movie, I think, because Grillo, and this is not necessarily a knock on him, but there was something a bit too light about it. Usually, when I'm reading this stuff in comics, I'm thinking of a hard boiled, kind of over it protagonist. He's not exactly sing songy about it, but it's kind of light. I was getting like a real Dave Bautista vibe from it, and it bugged the crap out of me. But as the movie goes on, and I realized that it's not just going to be this kind of action shoot 'em up set piece thing. And there's going to be some real good characters and fun story elements to it, and some great drama. I thought
Hmm.
I really started to warm up to it. Um,
Yeah.
it's yeah, like I said, I had trouble slipping into it initially, but by the time it was over, I mean, I was totally head over heels for this film.
Yeah.
I did like the setup, and it's something you mentioned that there's several of these movies out there now. Thank you for reminding me of Edge of Tomorrow because of that stupid marketing trick that they pulled when it came out on home video. I can no longer remember that movie as anything except Live,
Live,
Die,
die,
Repeat.
repeat. No, I don't
Yeah,
do that. I don't do that.
I know this. It's the thing. I can't. It's because when it came out, Live, Die, Repeat was so burned into my memory as being one of the stupidest ideas that it kind of took over the narrative in my head. And now I
Hmm.
have to look it up on IMDb. What was that Tom Cruise movie with aliens and time? But that's neither here or there.
Yeah.
But the thing that I liked about this that's different from other movies like Groundhog Day, like this, like another Hulu movie, Palm Springs, which we got late last
Hmm.
year.
Yeah.
Typically, that movie starts off with a character not yet having gone through what he's gone through, like with Groundhog Day. And
Hmm.
then it happens to him, and we're immersed in that story, and we have to figure it out. In Palm Springs, Andy Samberg's character has been going through it for a while, which we come to discover through the eyes of his girlfriend, would-be girlfriend, who is going, she discovers it, then goes through it, then discovers that he knows what's going on. This is the first movie of its kind that I've seen where we're right in the middle of this crazy time adventure with a guy who has a full understanding of what's going on, not necessarily how to get out of it, but he's almost resigned to the fact that he's going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. I forget what attempt level it starts at,
Like
but
40, 46 or something like that.
yeah, so that means that like there were previous attempts like 1 through 45 or something that that could be a prequel, but that we don't know about. And so yes, just like you said, I mean, we are kind of right in the thick of it with him. He's catching us up to where he's at, using that voiceover monologue. I kind of I understand what you're saying about what not really gelling with the narration right away. I think mainly because I probably had some different expectations for the movie that kind of took me off guard. And typically narration takes a while for me to get used to, unless it's a film noir, where I expect it. But I also just think like his kind of like his disarming tone is in a very, I think his Italian American nationality really came through here, like the actor. And so it feels like, I mean, it feels like he's very much playing an Italian American guy, like a Goomba, like, I can't believe this is happening. I mean, it's not necessarily talking like a mobster, but there is this kind of, like I said, matter of fact, like, hey, you'll never believe this, geez, oh yeah, here comes these two guys and they're going to come at me with this and that. And oh man, okay, geez.
But there is an important distinction you made there, which is it's the actor coming through, and it doesn't feel like Grillo is putting on an act.
Yeah,
He's not being one of Tony Soprano's henchmen who wakes up in this weird reality, you know?
yeah, and it's weird to see. I can't remember where you would feel like a lead kind of action, you know, a lead character a lead actor in an action movie that feels very like distinctive to, say, like being Italian, or I don't know, being German or whatever, Irish maybe with, or Scottish, maybe Welsh with like Guy Ritchie movies, but
Austrian, certainly with Schwarzenegger.
well, of course. I mean, there's no escaping that with the accent, right?
Yes.
But so that's kind of fun. I mean, it's. I think. Would you say that? Did it say where this story takes place?
Probably, but I'm horrible. I don't think it said, but I'm horrible with geography. There's probably landmarks all over, somewhere in California.
The thing is I know it was filmed in Georgia, but in Atlanta, but I don't know if it necessarily takes place in Atlanta.
Much like Baby Driver.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, and that's the reason why I compared to the Baby Driver is just that it's not as, I say, sharply or overtly obviously edited to a certain style as Edgar Wright. The editing here is great though, but it definitely has the energy of a Baby Driver.
It's got the weirdness too. I mean, I'm thinking of the opening of Baby Driver where Ansel Elgort is like doing the little dance moves in the car.
Yes.
And like, what is this movie?
Yes.
You do get that sense from this film. And one of the things I think that's so great and inventive, last week we talked about Raya and the Last Dragon, and I complained that it indulges in these video game tropes because it felt like it was trying to appeal in some way to a certain audience. This movie, it has video game tropes in it, but that's because it is the only way that our main character, who grew up playing, 8-bit side scrollers, as he says, can come to understand and figure out a way out of this situation. All these weird assassins are coming at him, so he figures out the levels, he figures out their strengths and weaknesses, the timing of it. He figures out, how to find certain weapons and get weapons training when he needs it. So he starts to develop a language of the video game to unpack his reality, and the movie does it too. It evolves as well.
Right. And of course, as kind of some side plots, I mean, obviously, I mentioned there's this estranged relationship that he has with Gemma, Naomi Watts' character, but that means he's also kind of estranged to his son, Joe. And although he is trying to find out why he keeps dying, why he keeps repeating this day that he dies, it only is maybe the movie's third act. It's hard to say that a movie like this has acts because they keep repeating itself. But anyway, yes. the third act is kind of when Joe or Roy realizes, wait a minute. And it takes this kind of almost climactic encounter with Mel Gibson's Colonel character for him to realize that, wait a minute, I forgot about Joe. And so, he dies again. And when he comes back, his focus is primarily totally reconnecting with his son. And that is kind of like this side plot that builds along the way in the movie in kind of a way I didn't really expect it, to come across. And when I learned that the actor who plays his son is his actual son, it made this whole montage thing that they had there made much more sense to me, because their connection and their chemistry was so natural and great. Like, he's not like, Roy isn't a mean guy. He isn't. He's really good at killing people, and he's really good at knowing a lot of moves and a lot of practice, let's say killing practices, except for sword fighting. He has to learn that, which we'll get to. But it's not that he's selfish, sure, and he's probably primarily focused on his career, and the fact that his relationship with his former lover and his son was neglected wasn't a conscious decision on his part. He wasn't like, I'm bailing, I'm out of here. I think his focus was just totally on military special ops, that he just it got away from him.
Well, it's there's some great scenes between Grillo and Naomi Watts. And Naomi Watts, she's there's so many MVPs in this movie, but I feel like she deserves a special call out because this does not feel like it's an easy paycheck for her. Like, oh, I'm this accomplished, actress. I'm just gonna go be in this dumb little video game movie and kind of collect a check. She really gives it her all here. And I think it's in the reading of their interactions together, you can fill in those relationship blanks. You're right. He is kind of married to his job. He's very good at it. Takes him all over the world. He's, fighting bad guys. He has a kid, probably as an accident. And I imagine there was a very hard conversation where he's like, I can't be around, it's, you're you're going to be a much better role model and provider for him than I could ever be. But you can tell that it's eating at him over the years. So that when he comes back, he's elated that Gemma has contacted him. He doesn't know that it's for a very serious reason, but he's kind of like, well, I could get back into this now that my other career has come to an end. So he's trying to do the right thing. He's a noble but very flawed character, and he does grow a whole lot during this movie.
Yeah.
You're right. He is a super assassin, kind of, or he's a special ops guy, but he's not an OP video game character from the start. He gets killed a lot. And he makes stupid mistakes. Some of those stupid mistakes are when he comes up against a new enemy with a new set of weapons. It's not like, oh, I can figure this out. It's like, no, he gets horribly killed. And sometimes it takes 20 or 30 attempts to, like in a video game, when you meet that new boss who has skills that you have to go and look up the guidebook or the cheat code to figure it out. You're just going to get bashed over the head until you get it right.
Yeah. It's not just like every time he tries to go through this day, he's getting shot in the head and boom, it's ending. If it was as simple as that, then okay. No, I mean, like I said, he wakes up in his kind of loft apartment, and not only is there a guy with a machete trying to kill him, but there's a helicopter outside his window with a guy in a Gatling gun waiting to just like pulverize the apartment. And it's not just like all these weapons that are coming after him, it's what he physically has to do as well. Like he has to jump out of a window to land on a truck, specifically timed. He has to get in a vehicle that he commandeers, carjacking basically. And then he takes that vehicle and he has to maneuver through traffic, and eventually like a bus he gets hit by a car, and then mind you, the car that he takes is a convertible, so he's easily trajected into a bus through the windshield, so he's got glass all over his face. So it's like every time he has to do over, he has to really coordinate, like, okay, how do I get around okay, I know what to do here, I know what's going to happen next, how do I get around, I got to time this just right. It literally is like a video game. But if anything is, he's also looking at time too, because that's an interesting part too, because he does go to, like, say this bar and kind of like for a little bit of chill time possibly, and of course the comic relief Ken Jeong is playing the bartender, and it looks like it's kind of like a sake bar, probably a Japanese bar or something, but he winds up, at one point he winds up realizing that he's spending more time than usual in that bar, and he's even spending more time, he feels like there was a point where there's not a lot of people coming after him, and funny enough, he realized that it was because the bar itself is underground, and the area I think that people weren't coming after him was, I think, from the subway area where he was at. And also that's where he reconnects with his son in this subway area. There's this whole section where there's like gamers playing these old school 80s games.
It's a pop-up 8-bit tournament. Yeah. There
you go. And so I thought that was really interesting how he discovered, like, okay, how are these assassins coming after him? Well, somebody put a tracking device inside him at some point somehow. So it just so happens that in the bar, there's this patron who is also a kind of a conspiracy theory nut who's also really well adept at how does one get tracking devices implanted in them, and so there's all these things that happen that change each scenario, each, let's say, new day revisited, that make it very interesting and entertaining.
Yeah, and if you go back and you look at what happens early in the movie to where he ends up at the end, you really do start to see things as levels, because we do get a lot of repetition of Ken Jeong and that whole bar thing, and you kind of like, where is this going? But after a certain point, once he gets the information he needs to go to the next level, we never see those characters again.
Right.
And it keeps,
Or,
like I said, it keeps evolving.
Yeah, or we see less of them. There is another patron who sits down behind them in a booth, and that's Michelle Yeoh's character, Dai Feng.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, Dai Feng, and we briefly see her, and then more days occur, and then later on he realizes, oh, I need to touch base with her because I need to bone up on my sword wielding, because apparently she's this swordstress.
Well, even that reminds me of something like Super Mario Brothers 3, like where you're on the map and you're going to the different levels within each world. You play that game enough times, you're like, okay, I've got what I need here, I'm going to go here and there. But you can end up later on in the map, and say through like a guidebook like they had back in the 90s, you can just say, oh, if you actually go back to a world that you have been to a million times, you can bump this little invisible block and it'll give you a warp whistle that you can take with you. So it does pay to backtrack a little bit so that you can advance further in the game than you thought possible. And so right. Carnahan, as he's putting this together, I don't know if he had help on it or whatever, but there's not just a real love of classic video games. There's some real thought put into it as to what would a video game type of reality look like if you're not making a video game movie.
Yeah. Obviously there's an affinity for video games and action movies. There is a nice little Joe Carnahan cameo in the bar at one point. So he's a patron in the bar there, so it's kind of funny.
I missed it. I'll have to go look. And
it looks like the other screenwriters, Carnahan co-wrote this with screenwriters Chris and Eddie Borey, Borey. I'm guessing they're brothers, or related somehow. So yeah, I think in his collaboration, it just seems like all three of them are on the same track and have a lot of video game knowledge in mind, but it never feels like there's never any say video game music or anything like achievement unlocked or anything like that. It's pretty much, it feels very real world, but the video game references are there, as I say real world, but it also is very comic booky as well in a way.
One of the things I love too is that Roy is the only person who ever has any awareness of the fact that he's able to repeat this day over again.
Right.
And so there are times when he goes up to was it Guan Yin, played by Selena Lo. She is the sword wielding super assassin who says, she always announces herself, I am Guan Yin and I have done this.
Yeah.
She's the one that I think kills him the most, like 20 or 30 times.
A lot of beheadings.
Right. But in this, during the course of this, he does train with Michelle Yeoh's character, because as he says, I've got all day, kind of a thing. But as he keeps getting better and going back up against her, in the final match, where, again, spoiler alert, he takes her down, you can tell how surprised she is that this guy that she's been told is just this lunkhead mercenary who stuck his nose in where he shouldn't, she can take him out easily, because she does the first time that they encounter each other. He's got all of these different advantages, and it's just great to watch the shock on her face and on Mel Gibson's face as he kind of gets his comeuppance. And there's, I think my favorite instance of this is a scene where Roy comes out of the elevator, the Brett, the security guy, is there with all of his men, and they're about to shoot him. and Roy realizes he's got to go just do this day over, and he shoots himself in the head. And I guess it's because he still has consciousness for a few seconds after he, sometimes it's during beheading, sometimes when he gets shot in the head, we still linger in that reality for a couple of seconds because his brain's not dead. But we see Brett just like look around and say, well, that was weird.
Right.
Because he has no idea. It's like, this guy that we're supposed to kill, he just shot himself. What? Why?
Yeah. It's an interesting point you made that he's the only one who knows what's going on, because every time those assassins encounter Roy, that's their first time with him, but it's not his first time encountering them usually. So that leaves room for some definite comedy, comedic moments. The more I think about it, the more I want to kind of rewatch it. It does have a lot of, even though you know what's going on and stuff, or what will transpire, there are the movie has a lot of rewatchability, I think.
It does. And I think the idea of knowing what's going on, I think that's true to a limited extent, because like I said, the people who made this movie, they know about all the other movies that you've seen. So they're constantly toying around. Like there's the redheaded assassin who is one of the first people that Roy takes out once he realizes he has an advantage. And we see her in, I don't know if it's a underground parking garage, it's like a big empty room. And it's full of, there's like just a lot of water on the ground. Like she's almost wading through it. It's like, just the top of her feet. And I thought, okay, he's going to show up and like electrocute her or something, drop, drop a toaster in the water or something. And, that's going to be it. But no, it plays out completely differently, with a really funny moment where, she has a custom made $750,000 gun that has these weird initials on it, AH.
That's right.
It turns out it's Hitler's gun that was given to her by Mel Gibson's character. And he said, "Are you kidding me? You've been trying to kill me with Hitler's gun."
It's like, that's just wrong. Not just the fact you're trying to kill me, but with Hitler's gun. Come on.
Right. And then you've got, it belonged to the big bad man who kept it as a memento in his desk, which is, it's fitting, I guess, because it kind of plays into the whole like Mel Gibson thing, the kind of mythos. But then ironically, if you believe his character, he's doing this whole thing with the giant Osiris machine to go back and change reality so that things like Hitler and 9/11 could not happen, to create a utopia, a world without war. But he's also totally demented, so you don't really trust that he wouldn't turn that to his advantage and become the type of person that you'd launch a war against.
Right. And one of the things that Roy mentions to him in their, I guess the final climactic smackdown, is that like, look, man, the past is the past. Essentially, what about the future? What kind of future are you making? Well, you're pretty much just obliterating the world. You're not like remaking anything. It's not like Thanos's snap. It's just all he's thinking about is getting rid of what's transpired in the past, but what does that do for the present and the future? So it's kind of interesting to see both of them talk in this kind of existential metaphysical way.
Yeah, and we get a couple of those conversations, a few of them because as we come to find out through Roy that he's been through this confrontation before, where Gibson starts monologuing at him. And then he gets to a point in the monologue that he realized, wait a second, I've never heard this before, so things are really different now.
Yeah.
But I love that they have these conversations, usually when one of them is on the verge of death, but there's never this video game, comic book movie moment where you find out that Mel Gibson has superpowers of his own, and he could, it's not like this fight to death. He's just this kind of ineffectual, obsessed billionaire guy who, if you get the better of him, you can shoot him, you can stab him. He's not going to be dodging swords and bullets like the assassins he hired is, because that's their job, not his.
Yeah, he has military experience. He is, a title. He has a colonel title, and he does go hand to hand with Roy at some point. So, it's not like he's this, Wall Street goon or something like that. He does come from a military background, and I think his militaristic approach and style is it has to be this way or no other way.
Right, but he's not like flipping off walls and
No,
bringing
no,
out these giant guns that are bigger than him to take care
no,
of
no,
the
no.
problem. He's it's
Yeah,
for as bizarre as this movie gets, it turns semi-realistic in the places where it would be most effective.
yeah.
There are a couple of montages, one of which you alluded to already towards the end of this movie. One is when Roy loses hope, and he just starts killing himself or allowing himself to
Or
be killed
allowing stuff.
like
Yeah,
15, 20 times, just like wasting all these lives until he snaps out of it and realizes, as you said, that he still has something to live for, and that's Joe. And it's so touching that they spend all of this time together video gaming. You find out later through a conversation with Gemma that they haven't just been playing games and talking about nonsense. They've been really getting to know each other.
hmm,
But then they sit on this park bench and watch the end of the world. And even that's kind of kept a mystery. You're like, wait, is there just a nuclear bomb or something that went off? But no, it's the Osiris machine that
yeah,
gets detonated somehow. Um, but just watching those interactions, especially as a dad, it's just that kind of sentiment that you don't expect from a movie like this. It just kind of creeps in there and it just holds on you. And it made me think of Roy in a completely different light. So by the time the credits rolled, I didn't want to see a sequel to this movie. I just really wanted to watch this movie again.
yeah. And I was almost thinking like there would be some type of like maybe fun or cool, um, you know, end credit sequence. Not
I was
not a
looking for that
scene.
too.
Not like a necessarily a scene, but some kind of fun approach to the credits. But it's not like that is it's not something very typical of a Joe Carnahan movie. This, speaking of which, I mean, this doesn't necessarily feel like a typical Joe Carnahan movie. I mean, usually, okay, like aside from A-Team, most of them are pretty, dark and, intense. I haven't seen. Oh no, that's Joe Lynch. That's somebody else. Well, he produced the Joe Lynch movie with Frank Grillo for Netflix and Anthony Mackie, Point Blank, which I hadn't seen. It was like 2 years ago.
I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, or Wheelman. I don't think he was involved in that, but that's also with Frank Grillo. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is usually they're pretty intense. Like I'm thinking like Narc, even The Gray, which is an excellent movie, just very depressing and dark and it's very much a survival movie, but it's also got these depressing undertones.
And I can never look at those mini bottles of liquor the same way again.
That's true. That's true.
Ugh.
Yeah. Did you ever see the very end scene in The Gray?
Yeah, I don't remember
Like
much
after the
about
credits?
it. Was it just them, he and the wolf, like lying
Yeah.
on the ground?
Right. And then one of them gets up. Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been a while.
Spoiler alert for The Gray. But yeah, and so I think it's a nice kind of combination of is penchants for violence, but also having fun with that, and his also obviously how he likes he likes bringing in that sensibility, this tone of entertainment in a video game sense, but also in an action, adventure, a thriller sense. This is something a little bit different, I think, for Carnahan and his fan base, let's say.
Yeah, I have not seen a whole lot of Joe Carnahan. I saw the A-Team. I didn't like it, but that was like 10 years ago, so maybe I
True.
feel different now.
Yeah.
I remember being a fan of The Gray, but there's an asterisk there. I don't know if there was something about it that I didn't like, but I have fond memories. This movie, I think, is really something special, partially because I had no expectations of it going in, and partially it's because I've seen Frank Grillo play a lot of heavies.
Mhm.
I haven't seen him play a lot of heroes. I mean, the reason the second Purge movie works at all is because he's the hero of that film. And I think who's the guy who plays the Punisher on Netflix?
Oh,
John
Bernthal.
Bernthal, yes.
Yeah.
I like him a lot, but after watching that Purge movie, I was like, oh, there's your Punisher right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's not a stranger to the MCU since he played, Brock Rumlow, aka Crossbones,
For
in
like
Winter
all of
Soldier.
5 minutes.
Yeah, Winter Soldier, Civil War. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the things I was disappointed because by that point I knew who Frank Grillo was. I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna be Crossbones, and it's like, yeah, but he's one character out of 60 in these 3-hour
Right,
movies.
right.
But it is cool to see him play this type of a leading man role, and by the end I was like, I want to see him get more mainstream attention, more appreciation, and
Yeah.
also I want to know what he does with his hair because he has signature hair. It's
Uh,
amazing.
Look, hair's one thing, but I want to know what he does with his abs, because it's like, what the heck? This guy is like, he's got like 2% body fat in his torso.
Well, you can also see the veins in his arm from
Yeah,
space. I mean,
from space. Speaking of space, he's in a sci-fi film with Bruce Willis called Cosmic Sin, and whenever that goes to streaming, I'm definitely checking it out.
We'll check that out together because Cosmic Sin almost, it sounds like the review of the movie.
I'm just not going to pay for it. So he's also coming out with, he's going to be in the sequel to The Hitman's Bodyguard, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, Once Upon a Time in Staten Island. And he's going to be in What If as Brock Rumlow Crossbones. So I don't know what segment, if that's going to be, I know that there's a What If segment where, what if Agent Carter got the super soldier serum? I don't know if he's going to be a part of that. I know that Stanley Tucci's coming back as Dr. Erskine, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Like, he is making a ton of movies. Like, he had, he's got 2 movies coming out. Well, he has 3 movies already that are out this year, or at least one's yet to come out. He's got like, 3 that were out last year. So he's making a lot. He was in that movie, or a small role in that movie, Into the Ashes. Remember that from last year? Last year or 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago.
I don't remember it.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I do. I hope
you remember. You interviewed the director.
Yeah, I was struggling to remember. I was confusing with a different movie. I'm like, wait, Frank Grillo was in that? But no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the one with James Badge Dale.
Yes.
Also in the MCU, Iron Man 3. But
what before we wrap this up, you were talking earlier about the identity of the kind of Italian American thing coming through as being an action star. Frank Grillo, I think we'll know more about this in a few years from now, but I feel like he is the successor. Like, where have all the action stars gone? I feel like he could be, an iconic action hero, being in movies that we just haven't tended to see a whole lot of in the mainstream.
I hear you. And I almost wish that this was something that was, this moment in his career was like maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years earlier, because he was born in 65. So he's in his 50s and he's still great shape. He doesn't look it. And it's just like, okay, if he continues to stay in this shape, I mean, I'm sure he could do a lot more. But, I would say if we were to, we mentioned Liam Neeson, who kind of started this late career action thing. I wouldn't necessarily, he's definitely not, Neeson isn't an action star, but he's been in action movies and he's done well, but it's more of just this, his age was definitely apparent and obvious. He's not ripped like Grillo.
Right. You don't go to Liam Neeson movie to see him running around in like, a t-shirt or shirtless,
tight jeans,
Yeah. He's not Bruce Willis from 30 years ago. Whereas Frank Grillo, I think, is definitely the heir to that kind of a throne.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, a lot. This movie definitely reminded me, if this movie came out in like the early 90s, it would star Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah.
But I think, no offense to JCVD, with a much better actor at the center of it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's the other thing is like Grillo can do the physical stuff and he has a great look and he can, come up, he has the aura of the badass, but he's got a real tenderness and personality and ability to act and carry a movie that I think is, lost. We didn't really see
Yeah.
that with Stallone until later in his career when he started
Hmm.
making movies like Copland and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think the last thing I want to say is, as far as the action scenes and going back to my earlier thing about comic books, one of the things I did love about this, there's a stairwell scene, kind of like
Hmm.
Sin City, where he's fighting his way down the stairwell. He's got that badass look of the sword, on his back, and he's got,
Mhm.
guns and stuff. There is a scene that I didn't think this was possible outside of comics, because I'm sure I've seen this frame replicated 30 panels across 1,000 comic books. He's jumping over the rail, like kind of like a side hip shot with the gun out,
Mhm.
and he doesn't fall to his death. He lands perfectly, but it looks like a pose that only a comics artist could draw. But there he is, Frank Grillo, real life comic book character, doing it,
Is
for
that
my
the one where
amusement.
he also lands like on stairs below him?
Might have
Right?
been, yeah,
Yeah. And I
because
was
he's
like,
like jumping over the rail.
mhm.
He flips himself over the rail, falls in that cool pose. Like as he's falling, he does the pose, and then he
Hmm.
lands.
Hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about the landing and I'm like, there's no way. Like my ankles would just give out, you know. It's like how do you know where you're gonna land? But hey, this guy's been doing it for a while. So
Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing is like, yes, each day is bringing something, a different situation that he has to take note of for the next day and the next time. But regardless, he's bringing this, you know, these years of, experience of, action and killing and taking people out. So it's not like, it's not like he's a librarian or some kind of salesman, and he has to figure out how to, kill people. It's not like he's, Keanu Reeves Neo, where, he was a computer hacker who had to learn how to become this action hero
well,
in the
he used to
Matrix.
cheat though. He got the plug for the, now I
That's
know
right.
kung
He
fu.
did plug. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Michelle Yeoh didn't give him a plug, Um, and of course, this movie also has, one of the things that I always cringe at when I see these in movies is like an actual character, extracting a tooth from their own head. It's like, that's always fun to watch.
It was,
Yeah.
but but also just the idea of it's played for comic effect. And I suppose
Hmm.
if we had seen him at the beginning of this, not picked up on Mission 46,
Yeah.
we would have seen a lot more pain and pathos to him,
Hmm.
because he feels it every time he dies, and by the time it's, the movie's winding down and he's dying or killing himself, he realizes he has to make a tough choice and he wants to just kind of get it over with,
Yeah.
because he knows he has to go through the entire, like, whether it's an hour or another 9 hours of, torture and fighting people. It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah.
But I did like that, when he's pulling his teeth out, like, didn't he get killed in the middle of the extraction and they had to come back and do it
Yeah. Yeah.
again?
Yeah. Somebody opened up the door, took him out. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny.
He just can't catch a break.
Yeah. So
But yes,
I hope people find this movie out. I mean, I know we're living in a day and age where people are just like scrolling through their Netflix, scrolling through their Amazon Prime, Hulu, what's out, what's new. And, honestly, I mean, I, you mentioned this. I I would like to think that this movie would have done well in theaters, but I don't know. Um,
I feel like it would have.
yeah.
Just because, again, people are, well, it's hard to say what people want now in the age of COVID, but I feel like beforehand they were craving something new. Like comic book movies were still doing great, but they had to be kind of tied in with, a larger property or have
Right.
a certain, tone or attitude to them. We just don't see movies like this that aren't, they're unabashedly throwbacks. They're unabashedly violent and, for lack of a better term, masculine. He's not, he's not a complete dirtbag, but there's not a whole lot of PC stuff going on here too, especially with, I can see people saying, oh, you've got the Asian assassin and the Asian sword master, and oh, you've got a little person and you're going to make fun of that and all that stuff, which, yeah, I don't agree with any of that stuff, just for
No,
the record,
but
YouTube, but I also understand that there is a language to throwback films like this that is not meant to, it's all kind of meant in fun.
Yeah, and it feels very appropriate for the character too, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think that there's people, I have friends of mine who are like, hey, are there any good action movies out there? I'm like, well, I could point them out to this one,
Definitely. This is a movie that's a Hulu original, but I would like to think that in another universe, they would have managed the Amazon model where they have some movies that come out in theaters and on streaming, and not just, an award season kind of a thing. But yeah, definitely watch this. If you have Hulu, it's free. You can watch it right now, and it's going to be an amazing time. Yeah. So thank you for an amazing time, sir.
Yes.
Mr. David Foley of Keeping It Real, Mr. Clean Shaven. I like this.
Yeah, well, it's spring. Well, almost. It's around the corner.
Yeah, we're changing the clocks on Sunday. It's spring.
Yeah, well, it may.
Or Saturday night, yeah.
It may snow a little bit next week, but.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Don't say the S word.
I know.
All right, sir. Well, thank you for turning me on to this movie. I'll have to get you back with something I can recommend that hopefully you'll like. I don't know. But until then, we'll catch you later.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yay.